For 15 years, I was known as the family failure, the dreamer who couldn't quite make it, the one who never fit in with the carefully crafted expectations of my family, the quiet one, the invisible one. They all thought I was just biding time, waiting for a moment of clarity that would never come. They never saw me for who I really was. Not until the day they stepped onto my private jet and realized I was a billionaire. I had always been under the radar, keeping my success a secret, especially from my family. I had made my fortune in silence, growing a virtual design empire from scratch. But it all changed in an instant when a Forbes article dropped, revealing my multi-billion-dollar empire. The headline was simple: Leah Thompson's virtual design empire valued at $4.1 billion. It went live 2 days before the annual Thompson family reunion. Talk about timing. The invitation to the family reunion sat unopened on my marble kitchen counter, the bold red script catching the first light of the Arizona sunrise. 15 years of distance, of silence, of deliberate invisibility, and everything was about to unravel. And not because I wanted it to. I glanced at my phone again. The article was already making waves. The notifications were flooding in. Everyone knew now, I chuckled to myself. The first genuine laugh I'd had in weeks. Thompson. My assistant's voice came through the intercom. Your brother Chris is online again. Of course he was. He had been calling nonstop ever since the media blast hit. I sighed and picked up the phone. Hi, Chris. I answered, leaning back in my chair. What the hell, Leah? He barked. I just got off the phone with CNBC. They asked me how it feels to be the brother of a billionaire. You want to explain something to me? I stared out at the desert skyline from my Scottsdale penthouse. Guess you'll find out with everyone else. Cut the crap, he shot back. You let us believe you were broke for years. Mom thought you were couch surfing. Worried. Were they? I laughed half-heartedly. You mean all those lectures about how I was throwing away my future? The sarcasm, the helpful suggestions to go work for Uncle Mark's insurance agency. I could hear the tension in his voice. I didn't have to explain. They were just trying to help. He said, no, I replied calmly. They were trying to mold me. And you let them silence me. You've always been the golden child, Harvard MBA, joined dad's accounting firm at 23, never questioned anything. There was a pause on the other end. I could tell he was trying to process everything. How long? He asked finally. Remember when I moved into that rundown apartment near Tempe? I asked. Yeah. When you started that 3D art stuff, that was 15 years ago. You didn't say anything else. And he didn't have to, I said, aloud to no one, smirking to myself. Everyone thought I was insane for tossing aside a finance degree to play with graphics. As Dad used to say, it was just a phase. But what none of you knew was that I'd already sold my first VR sculpture collection for $660.0 so. Chris paused on the other end, stunned. You, what, $660,000? Chris? 6 months later, I sold another batch for $200.0 so. By the time Dad was announcing over Christmas dinner that I was just figuring things out, I had already passed the $1 million mark, but you still borrowed money from Mom and Dad for rent. You drove that beat-up Civic until last year. His voice was trembling as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. I couldn't help but laugh. I never borrowed money, Chris. I asked them to invest in my company. They refused. Loudly. That Civic, he stammered. A choice. Just like this Scottsdale penthouse and the Gulfstream G700 parked at a private hangar downtown. Private jet, I whispered. How rich are you? Exactly. His voice cracked, disbelief seeping through. I thought back to the years of being the invisible one, the sweet but broke sibling, the one everyone assumed was just drifting along, never making it. Forbes will print $7.2 billion. I said casually, but that's modest. The real figure is closer to $10 billion. Chris made a sound between a gasp and a small scream. I've got to jump into a board meeting. I added nonchalantly, see you at the reunion. Click. I put the phone down and turned toward the intercom. Samantha, is everything ready? Yes. Miss Thompson, she replied, jet is fueled. Rolls-Royce fleet is scheduled to pick up each family member. The venue has been secured, private island confirmed, and all NDAs are signed. Perfect. I said. I picked up the reunion invitation again. For 15 years, I had let them box me in. The weird one, the dreamer, the financial disappointment. But this time, they'd see the real me. The morning of the Thompson family reunion arrived. The sun was rising over the Arizona desert, casting a golden light over my Scottsdale penthouse. I stood by the window, taking it all in. The view was breathtaking, the kind that makes you forget about everything else. But today, I wasn't just enjoying the scenery. I was preparing for what was about to come. My phone buzzed again, but I didn't need to look at it. I knew who it was. My family had been trying to contact me nonstop. My father, my mother, Tessa, even Chris, none of them had the courage to face the truth until now. But they had no idea what was coming. I grabbed my tablet, checked the security feed. Rolls-Royce vehicles were pulling into my private airstrip, one after the other. It was happening. The family reunion wasn't just any family gathering. It was going to be a spectacle, a show that would finally make them understand what I'd been quietly building for all these years. I walked out to the balcony, my feet silently tapping against the polished marble floors. From here, I could see everything: the helicopters, the private jets, the sprawling estate that I'd built for myself. This was my world now, and they were about to be a part of it. The phone buzzed again. This time, it was Tessa. I rolled my eyes but picked up anyway. OMG, Leah, she said, her voice dripping with disbelief. This Forbes thing, tell me it's a prank. What is going on? How? Why didn't you tell me? I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I wasn't going to explain myself to her. Not now. Not ever again. Instead, I hit the mute button and left her on read. Funny how the ones who always thought they were better, the ones who spent their time judging and mocking, were now the ones who couldn't handle the truth. The intercom buzzed again. Miss Thompson, your mother is in the lobby. She's quite insistent, Samantha said with a bit of humor in her voice. I sighed, let her up. 2 minutes later, my mother entered the penthouse, her heels clicking on the marble floor as if she was about to walk into a courtroom. Immaculately dressed, as always, her expression was a mix of confusion and thinly veiled anger. She stopped at the center of the room, her eyes scanning everything, from the polished glass walls to the expensive artwork hanging on the walls. Leah, what is all this? Her voice trembled slightly. I didn't answer right away. I walked over to the sleek coffee machine and poured myself a cup. This is my real home. Mom, I said calmly, taking a sip, not the modest little condo I keep for family drop-ins. Her jaw tightened. How? When? How long have you been living like this? 15 years, I replied, leaning casually against the kitchen island. Since the night you and Dad said digital art was a phase. You said no one would ever pay for it. Remember? Her eyes went wide, disbelief flooding her features. She took a few steps forward, her hand on the back of a chair, her posture stiffening as she absorbed the truth. You lied to us, Leah. For 15 years. No. I corrected her quietly, my voice unwavering. I didn't lie. I just didn't correct the story you chose to believe. You were so sure I was failing. You never looked deeper. Her face contorted with frustration. But we saw you struggling. The tiny apartment, that old Civic, asking for rent help. We thought you were. I never asked for rent help, Mom. I interrupted. I asked you to invest in my company. There's a difference. The realization seemed to hit her slowly, as if each word peeled back layers of the illusion she had been living in. She sank into one of the leather chairs, her face pale, finally seeing me not as the lost, broken child she had imagined, but as someone who had quietly been building an empire. Do you know how much money I've made? I asked, my voice soft but firm. I built this world while you all were still caught up in your own version of who I should be. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked to the window, looking out at the view. I could see her mind working, trying to make sense of everything. You lied to us, she whispered again, more to herself than to me. You could have told us. We could have helped. I shook my head. No, Mom. You couldn't have helped. You didn't believe in me. You thought I was a joke. And now look where we are. I turned away and walked toward the door, grabbing my phone off the counter. I checked the messages again. One was from Chris saying, you need to explain this. It's all over the news. I didn't answer. Not yet. As I walked to the elevator, I could hear my mother still muttering to herself, trying to piece together the truth. But it was too late for that now. The private jet was waiting. Samantha was already coordinating the pickups for my family. My Rolls-Royce fleet would be waiting at the airport, ready to take them to the private island. I had everything set. Everything was in place. I paused as I stepped onto the elevator, looking at my reflection in the polished steel doors. This was the moment. 15 years of silence, 15 years of being underestimated, ignored, and overlooked. This was where it all changed. As the doors closed, I whispered to myself, it's time to show them who I really am. What do you think Leah's family will feel when they finally see the truth? Do you think they'll regret how they treated her? Share your thoughts below. The journey to the private island felt longer than it actually was. I could feel the eyes of my family on me as we boarded the jet. Their disbelief hung in the air like an invisible weight. It was as if they were all trying to process the reality that was crashing down around them, but none of them were ready to accept it yet. Tessa, with her perfect hair and her designer clothes, was sitting across from me, clutching her Dior bag like it was a lifeline. Chris was on his phone, pretending to look at something important, but constantly glancing up at me, clearly wrestling with the information he was now trying to digest. My father sat next to my mother, both of them tense and stiff, as if they were afraid to breathe too deeply, afraid that the truth might swallow them whole. I didn't care anymore. I was done caring about their judgment, done playing the part of the daughter they never truly saw. Now, I was showing them the real me, the me that I'd kept hidden for so long. As we landed on the private island, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. This was mine. The island, the jet. The empire I'd built, it was all mine. No one had given me anything. Everything I had, I earned it on my own. And now I was about to watch them all try to make sense of it. The Rolls-Royce fleet was waiting for us when we landed, and I watched as the rest of my family stepped out, their faces a mixture of shock and judgment. It was almost like they couldn't reconcile the person they had known, the disappointment, with the reality standing before them. The island was pristine, a paradise of luxury and technology. Everything reflecting my success in ways they couldn't ignore. Welcome to Thompson Island, I said, my voice steady as I stepped out of the jet, leading them toward the resort. Their silence was deafening. My father cleared his throat as he followed me, trying to regain some semblance of control. Leah, this is excessive. This isn't necessary. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. This is my world, Dad. This is how it needs to be. As we walked through the property, I saw the way they looked at everything eyes wide, mouths slightly agape. The luxury was almost too much for them to process, too different from the life they had assumed I was living. I led them into the main dining hall, a modern space with floor to ceiling glass walls that overlooked the crystal clear ocean. The long table was set with silver and crystal, the kind of opulence they could never imagine. On every wall, the Forbes article was framed, backlit, impossible to ignore. The article had my face on it, proudly declaring my success. I wanted them to see it, to know what I had done, not just for the money, but for the validation, for the years of silence. I gestured toward the table. Please have a seat. We have a lot to talk about. They hesitated for a moment, but eventually they sat. The tension was thick. It was the kind of silence you feel when the truth is standing right in front of you and you have no choice but to face it. Leah. My father started, his voice trying to regain its usual authority. I think I speak for everyone when I say we're all a little surprised. I let out a small laugh. Surprised, I repeated, my voice low. I thought we'd move past that. I wasn't here to surprise you. I was just doing what I had to do. Why didn't you tell us? My mother asked softly, her eyes searching mine. We could have helped. You didn't have to hide. I looked around at them all, their faces twisted in confusion, a mix of guilt and disbelief. You didn't want to help, Mom. You didn't believe in me. Every time I tried to talk about my work, you shut me down. Every time I tried to tell you what I was building, you laughed at me. My voice trembled for a second, but I held it steady. You didn't want to see me for who I really was. You only saw what you wanted to see. Tessa opened her mouth to speak, but I cut her off. Oh, don't start. Tessa, you were always the perfect daughter, the one who made it in corporate America, the one who never had to struggle. How does it feel now, knowing I'm the one who made it? I paused, letting the words sink in. I made that during a coffee break. Her face flushed with embarrassment, but I didn't care. I wasn't here to comfort her. I walked over to the table and pressed a button. The screens around us flickered on, displaying a timeline of my journey. A visual history of every milestone they had ignored, every time they had dismissed me, the comments they had made about my art, about my choices, about me flashed on the screen. 2010, this 3D art thing is a waste of your degree. Ad result, my first digital sculpture collection sells for $50.0. So 2012, Leah, you need a stable career. Result, company valuation hits $15 million. 2015, at least one of us is doing well. Result, I close a $120 million partnership with a major tech firm. 2018, crypto art sounds like a scam. Result, my platform crosses 500 OO users and $600 million in sales. Every comment they had made, every time they had doubted me, was there displayed for them to see. I turned to them, my eyes hardening. This is what I was building. This is what you never saw. My father swallowed hard, clearly trying to keep his composure. Leah, I didn't know. I know. I interrupted, my voice calm. You didn't want to know. I could feel the weight of the silence in the room. It was thick, uncomfortable. They were finally starting to see me, not as the disappointment, but as the woman who had changed everything. I turned to Tessa. You flaunted your six-figure salary like it was gold. But guess what? I made that during a coffee break. Chris, who had been quiet up until now, spoke up. But why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you let us in? I leaned against the table, my eyes meeting his, because you didn't want to be let in. You didn't believe in me. You thought I was chasing a fantasy. The room was quiet now. everyone processing everything I had just shown them. I looked at my father, who was still sitting there stunned. Dad, do you remember the proposal I gave you 3 years ago? If you had invested that $1 million, your share would be worth over $100 million today. His face was pale, his hands trembling slightly. But I didn't wait for an apology. I didn't need it. I didn't do this for your approval. I said, my voice steady. I did it because it was my dream, my vision, and now it's my empire. I stood up, walking toward the balcony that overlooked the ocean. The sun was beginning to set, casting a golden light over the water. It was beautiful, the kind of view you only get when you've worked your whole life for something. I turned back to face my family. This is who I am, and this is only the beginning. How do you think Leah's family will react to her bold reveal? Do you think they'll regret how they treated her? Share your thoughts below. The days after the family reunion were nothing short of surreal. My parents, my brother, my sister, none of them had ever seen me this way. Strong, unapologetic. It wasn't just the empire I had built that shocked them. It was the woman who had been standing in front of them all along. They'd never known her, but now they had no choice but to see her. I spent the next few days watching them attempt to process what they had just learned. They all stayed on the island. No one wanted to leave so abruptly. The shock was too fresh, too raw. They were waiting for the dust to settle, for some kind of apology, for a re-entry into the life they thought they knew. But there was no going back. Chris, who had always been the golden child, took to wandering the property like a man lost in his own mind. Every now and then he would catch my eye, but I could see the hesitation in his glance. He didn't know what to say or how to fix the damage. I didn't expect him to. Tessa was still grappling with the fact that I had become everything she had mocked, everything she had envied. I saw it in the way she glanced at the luxury around her, the way she kept fidgeting with her phone, too afraid to make eye contact. But I didn't have time to play their games anymore. I wasn't here to fix them. It was my father who kept trying to reach out. The first few days, he acted like nothing had happened, sending me vague texts about how proud he was of my work ethic and how impressive my success had been. But I knew what was really going on behind those messages. He was still trying to regain some kind of control. Finally, after several attempts, he cornered me in the library on the third day. Leah, he said, his voice almost apologetic. We need to talk about everything. I didn't respond right away. I had been in meetings all day, taking calls with investors, finalizing deals. I was running my empire from a private island, and it still felt like a strange dream. But I had to face him. I had to face all of them. I set my tablet down on the coffee table and met his gaze. What's there to talk about, Dad? I asked, my tone cool but measured. You've seen it. The empire is real. It's mine. He stood there for a moment, unsure of how to proceed. Leah, we didn't understand. We didn't see it. You didn't believe in me. I interrupted. You saw a dream and you laughed it off. You saw a kid trying to figure it out. But I've been doing more than figuring it out. I built something real, and you never saw it. He flinched, his face contorting like I had struck him. For a moment, I almost felt guilty, but that guilt quickly disappeared. This wasn't about him. This was about me finally owning the success I had worked for. I never wanted to hurt you, he said, his voice a little softer. I thought you needed to come back to reality. You were always the one who got lost in your ideas. I didn't want you to get hurt. I leaned back in my chair, staring at him. You didn't want me to get hurt, or you didn't want to be wrong. You didn't want to admit that your youngest daughter might actually have been right all along. He didn't say anything. He just stood there, mouth open, struggling to find the words. It wasn't easy for him. It wasn't easy for any of them to see me, not as their failure, but as the woman who had surpassed them all. You were so focused on being right. I said, and that was your mistake. You pushed me down, ignored me, told me I wasn't good enough. You didn't trust me, Dad, but I didn't need you to. I built this without you, without any of you. For the first time in years, he didn't try to defend himself. He just nodded slowly, accepting the truth of what I had said. Later that night, I found Chris sitting by the edge of the infinity pool, staring out at the horizon. The dim light of the moon was all that illuminated him, his face unreadable. I walked up to him quietly, not sure what to say, but knowing we needed to talk. Chris, I said, sitting down beside him. You've been avoiding me. He didn't look at me. I don't know how to process all this. Leah, you've been hiding this whole life from us. You let us think you were just, well, that you were a disappointment. And now you see the truth. I finished for him. I've never been a disappointment. Chris, you just never looked closely enough. You never cared enough to understand what I was doing. He turned to look at me then, his face still full of that hesitation, but there was something softer in his eyes now. I'm sorry, Leah, he said, the words slipping out with an honesty I hadn't expected. I didn't see it. I didn't want to see it. I nodded, taking a deep breath. It's fine. You're not the only one. But it's time for all of you to stop seeing me through your narrow lens. I'm not here to fit into your idea of who I should be. I am who I am, and this life, this empire, I built it on my terms. We sat in silence for a few moments, the soft hum of the ocean waves filling the air. It was peaceful, but for the first time, it felt like the world had shifted, like the weight of all the years of silence and self-doubt had finally been lifted from my shoulders. The next few days went by quickly. My family stayed in their guest villas, each of them trying to process their own version of what had happened. I didn't try to fix things with them. I didn't feel the need to explain myself anymore. What mattered now was that I was living the life I had always dreamed of. And whether they accepted it or not, it was mine. By the end of the week, I found myself standing on the balcony, looking out at the sprawling estate I had created. The island was quiet now, just the sounds of the ocean in the distance. I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. I had made it. I had built this life from the ground up. And now, nothing could take it away. The days stretched on, and the tension between my family and I began to shift into something else, something that felt inevitable. It wasn't that they had come to accept me, not really, but they had truly seen me for the first time in years. They understood, at least in part, who I was and what I had built, but understanding didn't mean forgiveness, not yet. By the end of that week, the media storm surrounding my success had quieted down, but the whispers had only just begun. My father and mother returned to their usual life, trying to piece together how to fit me back into their image of the perfect daughter. It wasn't a fit. It would never be a fit. I had spent too long carving my own path, but I didn't mind. I didn't need their approval anymore. The truth was, I had never needed it. The only thing I ever needed was to believe in myself. I had come to a realization during that time, something so simple, yet so profound. The hardest part of success wasn't making it. It was accepting that those who doubted you might never truly understand how far you've come. That part, that was on me. It always had been. I got a message from Tessa late on the 5th night. The message was short, to the point. I can't believe I was wrong about you. I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive myself, but I want to try. I want to know the real you. Can we start over? I stared at the screen for a long time before typing back. I didn't rush this response. I needed to say the right thing. something that honored everything I had been through, but didn't put me back into a box of her creation. We can't start over. Tessa, not as we were, but we can start from here. From this moment, from who I am now and who I've always been, but I need you to stop seeing me as the person you thought I was. I'm not that girl anymore. I set my phone down, my chest tight. It wasn't easy. I had spent so much of my life trying to make her proud, trying to prove I was worthy of being seen. But now, all I needed was to be true to myself. I spent the following week flying between business meetings, investor calls, and a few personal projects I had been putting off. My empire had grown, and I was proud of it, but the work didn't stop there. Not by a long shot. A week later, Chris called me, his voice softer this time. Leah, he started, hesitation in his tone. I've been thinking about what you said, and, well, I just wanted to say, I don't get it all. I don't understand everything you've done, but I'm proud of you. I'm proud of the woman you've become. I could hear the sincerity in his voice, and that was all I needed. That was the moment I had been waiting for when the man who once looked at me with doubt now saw me as an equal. Thanks, Chris, I said, my voice calm. I've never needed your approval. But hearing you say that means more than you think. There was a long pause before he added, and Dad wants to meet you, he said. He said he finally gets it, wants to talk business with you. I felt the familiar ache in my chest, but this time it didn't hurt. It was just a reminder of how far I had come. I'll think about it, I replied, a small smile tugging at my lips. But it has to be on my terms. Months passed, and life started to settle into its new rhythm. I kept building, I kept growing, I kept learning. My business continued to skyrocket, reaching new heights I hadn't even dared to imagine years ago. But the real change, the one that mattered most, wasn't in my bank account or my latest deal, it was in me. I had learned to let go of the past. I had learned to stop chasing the approval of people who never saw me for who I truly was. I had learned to trust myself, to step into my power, and to claim the life I had always deserved. And then one morning, I received an unexpected call. It was from my father, Leah. He said, his voice oddly soft, I've been thinking about everything. And, well, I want you to come meet with me, not for business, for us. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I agreed. When I arrived at the office, he was waiting for me with a cup of coffee, his usual crisp suit replaced by a more relaxed look. The walls in his office were covered with plaques, awards, and photos yet, for once. They seemed to matter less than the man sitting in front of me. We didn't talk about business. We talked about life, about the choices he made, about how he had always pushed me to be something I wasn't. And for the first time in years, we talked about how I had built something real. I didn't believe in you, Leah, he admitted. I thought you were just a dreamer, but you've proved me wrong, and I'm proud of you. I nodded, not needing more than that. You've always been my daughter, he added, his voice steady. And I've learned that sometimes that's all that matters. The rest of the reunion was a quiet affair. But for the first time in my life, it felt right. My family didn't need to fully understand me, and I didn't need to constantly prove my worth. What mattered now was that I had built something that was mine, something I could be proud of, not for anyone else's approval, but for my own. And with that, the story of Leah Thompson was no longer just about the little girl trying to make everyone proud. It was about the woman who had built a legacy for herself. What do you think Leah's next steps will be now that she has reconciled with her family? Will she continue her business journey, or will there be new challenges ahead? Share your thoughts below. A new chapter, reflection, and life lessons as I sit here now, reflecting on everything that's unfolded over the past few months. It hits me just how much has changed. It's not just about the empire I've built or the wealth I've accumulated. It's about the person I've become. The journey I've taken has been long and full of twists, but every step, every hardship, and every success has led me to this moment of clarity. Looking back, I realized the hardest part wasn't building my empire. It wasn't the sleepless nights or the relentless pressure to succeed. No. The hardest part was finding the courage to walk away from the expectations of my family, my friends, and even myself. The hardest part was learning to accept that I didn't need their approval to be worthy. I didn't need their validation to succeed. I needed only my own belief in myself. For so many years, I allowed my family's perception of me to dictate who I thought I was. I let their doubts and their judgment shape my identity. I carried the weight of their expectations like a chain around my neck. But once I let go of that weight, everything changed. I started living for me, not for anyone else. I stopped trying to fit into a box that wasn't mine. I stopped chasing approval from people who didn't see me for who I truly was. And that's when the real growth began. There's a life lesson here that I want to share with anyone who's ever felt small, overlooked, or misunderstood. Don't wait for permission to be yourself. Don't wait for others to see your worth. It's not their job to validate you. It's yours. The world will try to shape you, mold you into something it thinks you should be. People will doubt you, criticize you, and try to control the narrative of your life. But the moment you realize that you are enough, just as you are, that's the moment you start living. I'm not saying it's easy. The road to self-acceptance is long and often painful. There are still moments when doubt creeps in, when the old voices from the past try to whisper in my ear. But I've learned to silence them. I've learned to trust myself, to trust my instincts, and to embrace the path I've chosen. Success isn't measured by the accolades or the wealth you accumulate. It's measured by the peace you find within yourself. It's measured by your ability to stand tall in your truth, no matter who tries to tear you down. As I look ahead, I'm excited for what's next. There's still so much I want to accomplish, so much I want to give back. But for now, I'm content. I've learned to appreciate the journey, not just the destination. I've learned to cherish the quiet moments, the moments when I'm just me. I've stopped being afraid of who I am. I've stopped apologizing for it. The greatest lesson I've learned is this: you are your own greatest asset. Invest in yourself, trust yourself, and never, ever let anyone else define your worth.